Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to another film review. Today, we're going to be talking about the Trial of the Chicago 7, which is Aaron Sorkin's new written and directed film. This is currently on Netflix. I'm sure it got did it get a short cinematic release?
Yes, it did. It did. It was available in cinemas, at least in the UK, for a few weeks before it came out on Netflix.
I was going to say, I still don't know what the current state of theatres are across the world. I think America's still pretty bad with it at the moment. But we are here to talk about this movie. This is a historical legal drama film. So it's pretty heavy going. Me and George were sort of talking behind the scenes. We knew that this was a film that we wanted to see and was probably going to be fantastic. And definitely we'll probably see this again next year when we get to awards season. But it's one of those films where you have to sort of be in the right frame of mind to watch it. It's a 2-hour, 10-minute, as I said, historical legal film. And obviously with Aaron Sorkin doing the screenplay, you kind of know what you're getting in for. But before we get into the review, we'll get the socials out of the way first, then we'll dive deep into this film. So over to you, Tate.
Yes, sure. So as Chris said, this film's on Netflix and it may be available in cinemas as well. So please, if you haven't watched the film first, go and watch it. But if you have, please comment below with your thoughts on the Trial of the Chicago 7. Don't forget to like the video, comment along if you want, share the video to as many people as you can, and subscribe. We are getting so close to our next goal. And if you want to find out about upcoming videos and things we're going to be doing on the channel, please go onto Facebook. Just type in Cinema Savvy. Go onto Twitter @cinema_savvy. And if you want to pick up a t-shirt with a logo on, then go into the description on TeePublic. Also, we do have another live stream coming up very, very soon. This Saturday, in fact, another drink along to celebrate Halloween. So please tune in for that. We're going to be watching Scooby-Doo and getting very drunk, which I think is a winning combination for Halloween. And we're all very much looking forward to that. Okay, Trial of the Chicago 7. This film has been in development for so long. We were chatting about this just before we went live with this one. And I hadn't actually realized how long it had been going on and whose names had been tied to it previously. So I can't remember who said it first, who did the kind of background research on this.
Or George definitely mentioned the ties to Steven Spielberg. So if you want to talk about that, George, because you probably know more about it than I do.
Yeah, so when this film... I'll go back to recent last year before we go to the 13. So obviously we knew probably the start of the year that, there's an Aaron Sorkin court film happening based on a historical event. That's going to be an Oscar film for 2021. I think everyone kind of knew that heading into this year. And because I'm not on the Sorkin hype trains, which everyone else, I just haven't seen many of his films. I've seen Social Network only once a long time ago. It has been on my rewatch list actually to see recently. I've seen this, and I think I've seen one other thing he's done. So I know how respected he is. I've not seen enough of his work to know this was exactly what I was going to get. I just know via reputation and liking Social Network that I do want to watch this. And the cast of this is enough to probably sell a film to anyone. Mainly looking actually at Sacha Baron Cohen. Not because I've been on the hype the last week, watching Borat, Bruno, and all the other stuff. When Sacha Baron Cohen is a drama film, I think I get a bit more attached to seeing that because it's kind of like, that old phrase where, it's easier for comedians to go into drama than it is for people that do dramas to do comedies. And that's when I think he was in Hugo. Granted, let's ignore Alice in Wonderland. But when he gets attached to other projects, I always get interested. So I had that going for it and a couple of other casts. But yeah, I was mainly going for this off the back of the hype, in all honesty. And when I read that Paramount saw this Netflix as soon as lockdown happened, didn't surprise anyone. I think the three of us thought we might have got this at London Film Festival because Netflix tend to release a couple of films. Obviously, we didn't get any this year for obvious reasons because it was online and says Netflix. What would be the point? So, yeah, the history of this, though. So I think, Chris, you mentioned the writer's strike. I knew that Spielberg's name had been attached to this a long time ago. I don't know whether Aaron Sorkin wrote the first draft back then. Whether it's something he always had in his sort of briefcase waiting to do a film of, but this feels like a Spielberg film in the most polite sense I can think of it. Here's the good side of America, it's an American history film. We want to show the good people in the court going against the broken system. And I had Spielberg vibes, and before I get into my thoughts, you definitely don't get Spielberg direction vibes, which I'll get to later on. But as far as the script writing goes, I was on point for this. However, I'll also get into it later on. I'm actually more excited for something else that's involved with a character in this film who's getting his own Oscar film next year. I don't know if that's a polite way on to you guys.
No, definitely. I was thinking, if Spielberg was directing this film, I'm sure there'd be a Tom Hanks thrown in there somewhere as one of the seven, maybe. But on the flip side, with Aaron Sorkin, he's easily one of my favorite writers, and he's very recently got into the directing game. It was 2017's Molly's Game, which I actually thought was a really good film. I haven't gone back and rewatched it since it came out, but I do think that comparing these two films together, I feel from memory that Molly's Game, from a directing standpoint, had much more style and flair to it visually. Not to say that this is like a poorly photographed film or anything like that, but it just felt very flat. It didn't feel like it was sort of, well, it is now geared towards smaller screen with Netflix, for example. But in terms of, I mean, I couldn't sort of get that huge cinema scope if I went to see it on the big screen and just take in those visuals. It is still inherently and playing to his strengths from a writing standpoint. You know, when you've got an Aaron Sorkin film that you are, or written thing, you're going to have an absolutely solid screenplay. So I've actually watched a lot of the stuff that he's done in terms of films. A Few Good Men, The Social Network, Moneyball, Steve Jobs, which was one of my favorite films from that year. And he's especially prevalent in TV as well. Now, I haven't seen these. I've seen bits of them, but The West Wing and The Newsroom, I know, are absolutely acclaimed TV series with many seasons. So maybe it will be something I get to at some point, perhaps. But I knew I was going to go into this expecting a good script. I don't think it's one of Sorkin's best scripts. I do think there are much better screenplays that he has written, but you still have that very quick, witty back and forth banter and dialogue. And especially because you have such a huge ensemble cast, he was able to effectively bring that across with all the different personalities in the courtroom, I thought. And I always say that I'd love a good courtroom film. And there are definitely some good, like, little portions of this film that I definitely probably watch in isolation on like YouTube or something than maybe perhaps the entire film as a whole again.
Yeah, as far as my kind of Sorkin kind of memories of watching his films and stuff like that, I had 3 of his films in my top 25 of the decade. That's how much I respect him as far as a writer's concerned. I think he was so important for the 2010s with that writing. I'd already seen A Few Good Men, but like you said, like Social Network, Moneyball, I haven't seen Molly's Game. To be fair, Steve Jobs is an underrated masterpiece, I honestly think. But going into that and going into this film, I'm not saying this film's bad or anything, but this is the weakest kind of script that I've seen from his films. And I mean, I haven't seen Molly's Game, so I can't really compare it to that. But compared to the other films, I don't know whether it was the setting or whether it was the fact that he was also directing, and that kind of, the direction wasn't anything to marvel at. And even though the courtroom scenes were great kind of interactions between the characters and everything like that, I don't know if it kind of took it away from it and maybe kind of made it feel less impactful because it was so bland with kind of the direction and stuff like that. It's not to deter away from watching the film. The film is a great film to watch. But I mean, we've just done the London Film Festival as well. And in London Film Festival, there was a film called Mangrove. Now, maybe this is kind of a British versus US thing, but Mangrove was such an amazing, impactful film. And that was a courtroom drama film. And that was a courtroom drama film that dealt with some very similar themes that were shown in this film. And one film I'm going to be going on and giving further praise to. And this film's kind of, when you're comparing up against it, is, well, it's very underwhelming. And I think when we'll go into the review further, I'm going to use the word underwhelming again, because I think a lot of the performances from the film itself are quite underwhelming as well. Not the best performances we've seen from all the actors. Are doing well, and obviously the script is kind of almost carrying their performance at this point. But I feel like just in general, I was a little bit disappointed in the film because I was expecting a lot more from it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty much on the ball with you there. And in terms of the screenplay as well, I felt like it started off great, the screenplay, and then it just kind of leveled off by like the last half, when you had that like really quick, fast-paced editing where it was cutting to all the different characters and they were like finishing each other's sentences, and you know, you were sort of establishing all the characters and their personalities. I was like, that's the Sorkin script, that's it right there. And then as it kind of went on, it just kind of went into sort of like an average run-of-the-mill movie.
Boring courtroom drama. I don't want to use the word boring because I did enjoy watching this film, but it did feel like some parts of the film were kind of dragging on a little bit, and it became flat. And because of that, the performances became flat.
And to your point about performances, sorry, I will agree with that. I mean, you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in there, who's basically just playing Joseph Gordon-Levitt. There was nothing. I didn't really get any kind of flair from him. I think the walkaway actor in this for me was Mark Rylance. I did think he turned in a solid performance. His character, and I would say that his character, in terms of the screenplay and the lines that he was given, had that flair to it constantly throughout, and maybe that was just something that Rylance brought to the role because he's a tremendous actor. And it was really nice to see Michael Keaton there also, because that was kind of where I was zoning out, and then Keaton showed up. I was like, oh, Michael Keaton's on screen, this is going to get good now. And then he's in it for about 5 minutes, and then I kind of slouched back again afterwards. But yeah, it's a weird one with the performances.
I don't know whether this is kind of a critique of kind of the performances in itself, the structure of the film, or even the characters they're portraying. But because there are 4 different groups here portrayed, I know it's the trial of Chicago 7, but I mean, this isn't really a spoiler because this is history that happened in the United States. But there is 8 people on trial in this case, and they kind of fall into 4 groups of people. Or is it 5 groups of people? I don't want to get that right.
Many groups of people.
Many groups of people.
Yeah.
But in these groups of people, the characters within the groups are so similar. It doesn't allow any performance to be elevated in any way, shape, or form. You've got Sacha Baron Cohen and this other guy who are kind of the hippie characters, but you can't really define either of them. They are just the hippie characters. And there's nothing kind of distinguishing between them other than the fact that we know who Sacha Baron Cohen is. We know him as a famous actor. And it's very similar with Eddie Redmayne and the other guy who he's paired up with. I can't even remember like the name of the guy. But they all seem to fit into these very simple molds. And because they're such similar characters and have very similar kind of goals within the film, they kind of meld together, and it means that there's no identity in the characters in the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and that's the issue with me. So I'm going to jump to Mangrove as well, because a big thing Mangrove is that we know it's going to be a courtroom drama. It's been advertised as a courtroom drama, but you don't actually get the court case till the second half. Now, what this film does really well, it sets each character up individually. Pairs, here's the 2 stoners, here's the politicians, here's like the students, here's this, that, everything you need, and then you're straight to the court case 5 months later. And I'm not saying you need to show what happened, because they do weave it in. But when you realize they're all on trial, it's like, okay, so we're so clearly going to get the origin of why each and every one of them was individually on trial as the film goes on. And it just stems into things we've seen before. And I said this to you, Tate, before we hit record, that you can tell this was directed by a writer. And I said, I've not seen Molly's Game, and I've not seen a lot of Sorkin's films, so I'm quite neutral in my opinion in this. And you look at Mangrove, and that's Steve McQueen. You look at the camera choices, you look at the direction itself, what he tried to do. That didn't feel like a sort of courtroom drama you could go downstairs and your parents are watching on TV or something. This does. That felt like a film, and that's on a TV budget. This felt like TV, and it's a film budget. And a really weird criticism, I don't know if you guys were the same. Netflix is great. You get HD, you get 4K, you get all of this. When there are period films, sometimes it's so modern, it doesn't look like a period film. It looks like here are these people, and this is meant to be the 60s. It felt like that. Whereas going back to Mangrove again for that comparison, you feel like you are in that era with them. That's everything from music to the scenes to the set decoration. This just felt so modern. And I don't know that's a criticism. I don't know that's modern technology.
Do you think, I was just going to go back to that. Do you think the comparison between Mangrove and this film is that Mangrove was able to build up tension by having that kind of pretense and slowly building it up, and then slowly kind of showing more and more and more, and then suddenly it builds up, it boils over, and then you have the courtroom scene to kind of like, it would rank up the tension even more because now they're on trial, they're even more of a threat. Whereas this film, it introduced the characters, and then suddenly they're in the courtroom, and there's no tension. Like there's even though they're on trial, there is absolutely no tension in the characters at all. And it tries to kind of build from there, and it just doesn't.
I'm not going to lie. So I knew little bits of history here and there, but I don't know the history of the Chicago 7. I thought it would also be it's not spoiler, but essentially the ending of this film, they all go to prison and it got overturned. And it's like you built up this 160-day court case, whatever you want it to be. We've had the Michael Keaton get out of jail card, which doesn't work because they made it clear from within 10 minutes of the film starting, this judge is corrupt, this judge is evil, he's not going to play ball. That never changes. Nothing ever changes. And I'm not saying it's a punch in the face that it got reappealed and there was no second trial, because we do need to see this film. But it's just like, okay, so that was ultimately pointless. And to a point. Obviously, there is a point of this, but it sometimes can feel like a slap in the face. Like, oh, so it was appealed and it was done on the spot. You built up all this tension to them going to prison. So I had a couple of issues there with that. The comparisons is horribly there because it's the same thing. It's dealing with this sort of an issue at the time, sort of, late 60s, early 70s of racism, civil rights movements. And then you bring in the corruption of the police, the abuse of power. You're bringing in these people that maybe more in this one. They're not so innocent in this, but we've seen this recently, and that's where I struggled with this. It's not a criticism of this film because there'll be people that haven't seen anything similar recently. But going back to that point about it feels modern, when you're just casting big names in any role you can get, sometimes it's great for an ensemble cast because on paper it's a great ensemble cast, but you looked at Mangrove and I saw characters, even though Letitia Wright's in it, she's maybe the biggest name in it. She's a supporting actress in that. I look at this and I'm like, oh, it's Mike Rylance. Oh, it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Oh, look, Michael Keaton's popped up. Michael Keaton's probably the highlight of the actors in this, his short spell. Sacha Baron Cohen's obviously Sacha Baron Cohen. And the only interesting one for me is Jeremy Strong, because he's cropped up this year. I have not seen Succession, which is where he's won his Emmy and everything. And this is the character everyone's plastered over social media who plays Jerry Rubin. And, he's in The Gentleman, he's been loads of stuff. And from what I've seen of him, they massively underused him. But when you've got an ensemble, you bringing in big names for 2 minutes here and there. It reminded me of what was it? Not Vice. Is it The Big Short?
The Big Short, which funnily enough, Jeremy Strong was in The Big Short.
And it just reminds me of oh look, here's a big name actor for a 2 minute segment. They're going to go now, but they've chipped in. It just doesn't feel natural. It makes it feel more modern again because it's just plastered with names they could get. Whether that's me overthinking something, but I did enjoy this. This is the thing. I enjoy this. I thought the writing.
We're giving this film a lot of criticisms for a film that we actually quite enjoyed.
I think my expectations for this are a lot higher than what I've come out with, and I think that's the issue. I'm watching this not in Oscar season. If I'm in Oscar season mode, I'll be having very different thoughts on this. Because it'll be this and this and this, but it's hard to stem away from the fact that I think the direction was stale. It just didn't feel like anything I've not seen before, and that's a massive shame because I was actually excited to watch this. Granted, it took me sort of two weeks extra to actually watch it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much going to echo what you guys say. I just looked at the reviews for this thing. This is insanely high. This is 91, 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. This is getting a lot of positive reviews. And I'm kind of with you that I feel like I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer on it. I didn't hate this film by any stretch of the imagination. It just didn't really do anything for me. It didn't wow me from a visual standpoint, from a writing standpoint. The script was good. It was a good Sorkin script, but it's not the best Sorkin script I've seen. There's loads more of the films that I listed at the beginning that I think are miles better script than what we got given here. The performances, the tremendous actors of their craft, every one of them, but it's just, apart from Rylance maybe, but even then I've seen better Rylance performances than this one. It was very surface level. It was very flat, and I don't know, maybe it's one that will benefit from a second viewing, as you mentioned, around Oscar season. Maybe I'll go back to this one if it's still on Netflix and give it another watch, and maybe I'll have a different opinion on it. But honestly, I didn't have much to take away, and I don't really have much to talk about it. It's just a sort of run-of-the-mill courtroom film. Nothing much more to say, really. I'm just
going to add one more thing as well. So I spoke to Tate before we hit this. So the real-life Fred Hampton's in this film, obviously, it doesn't really go into his assassination as such. I kept thinking I swear I've seen a trailer for something that's recently. One of the main Oscar films for next year, which looks like one of the best Oscar films for next year, is called Judas and the Black Messiah. It stars Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, and Jesse Plemons. And Daniel Kaluuya is playing Fred Hampton. The whole film was about his assassination. When his name cropped up and I did a quick Google, I started saying, that's the one I want to watch right now, not this. And I know it's very different. It's so weird. They big up Fred Hampton, he dies, and then they're done with it the next day. And it's so strange that maybe in April, when the Oscar ceremony's on with chatting at night, it might be Judas and the Black Messiah versus Trial of Chicago 7. But I know which one I'm looking more forwards to. Granted, it covers different things. I think this is trying to juggle too much stuff from its era to do that, because it is fine, but it just feels like one of those Oscar films where no one's going to speak about it after a year's time. It'll have been out. And
here's the thing: we talked a little bit about awards here, and I have no doubt this is going to do something at the awards because. And this is kind of a criticism here of the Oscars. I love the Oscars, but This film's very American. This film is unbelievably American and very patriotic. There's a scene, without spoiling it, there's scenes towards the end where it is literally just like flag waving, like hand on chest, singing national anthem kind of levels of kind of patriotism that goes on in this film. And I feel like that resonates with Oscar voters anyway. Just, it seems to. There's always one film that sneaks in which does this kind of style of drama and throws in kind of the, oh, American, be a patriot and stuff like that kind of message at the end. And I feel like this film, it'll get nominated for writing. I don't know if it'll win or not, probably, because it's Aaron Sorkin, but I honestly don't think the writing deserves it, if that makes sense. It's an Aaron Sorkin script. It's a great script, but it's not his best script. And I don't think that, seeing as he's not at the top of his work at the moment, it should be a winning kind of script. We were talking about this beforehand as well. Is this a rumor, or is this them kind of actually saying they're going to try and nominate 7 people or have a campaign for 7 supporting actors?
So they've campaigned, it was on the news this morning actually. Obviously for Oscar season, they get to the for your consideration PDFs they send around to the people. They've submitted 7 actors from this, and they're all going to be put forward for supporting actors. I'm assuming it will be maybe like what? I mean, because anyone can submit anything for the Oscars, so it's kind of pointless. But
I mean, Eurovision, the film from this year, has put out a For Your Consideration Oscar campaign, which is ridiculous.
Everyone, and with streaming this year, they're allowing streaming films, so why not? And that's the big thing. But I'm going to bring up a comment from Carl. I think he even echoes what we say. It was a film I wasn't expecting to like. I was waiting and waiting. It just didn't hit me. Could have benefited from a better courtroom director to lift the words off the page.
Problem is, he's a very good courtroom director. In fact, he's directed what I'd say probably the second best courtroom film of all time, behind My Cousin Vinny, with A Few Good Men. And I don't know, it's a winning combination. He always does kind of these court kind of films, or films where there's like boardroom discussions and shit like that, like behind the scenes of kind of these very interesting things. And yet I don't think it works if he's in the directing seat. I want to go and see Molly's Game now to see if that kind of holds true or not.
Honestly, I think it was, I mean, I mentioned this before, and maybe it was just me not paying attention to it and seeing how everything was connected, but it felt a little unfocused, sort of like where my attention should have been with the courtroom. I understand this was a court case that went on for ages with many different factors featuring into it, but there's one part where it seems like someone's on trial for murder. A black man who's been, completely persecuted in the courtroom by a racist judge, and we're focusing on that, and that's the similarity to Mangrove. And then it kind of shifts to general riots and police brutality, and it's like, okay, and then that character disappears, and we're focusing on this. And then by the end of the film, they're talking about Vietnam and trying to stop Vietnam and how they don't agree with it. And it's like, okay, so it's an anti-war. So there's all these different segments throughout the film, and I'm sure all elements played into the real courtroom, but it just, from a film standpoint, I didn't know where my attention should have been. Maybe that's why my attention just kind of eventually petered out from it. If I'm going to throw some positives, though, because I have been really, really down on this film, I thought it was quite effective. Doesn't happen loads, but some parts in the film he uses real life archival footage cut into like the actual protest. I thought that was very effective how that was done. And then probably my favorite scene in the film, there's a moment where Mark Rylance it comes into possession of a tape with Eddie Redmayne's recording on there, saying that he was basically endorsing the riots. And then it's this beautiful montage, like this 5-minute montage that cuts as his sort of going through like a mock trial of the questions they would be asking him, like the other side of the courtroom. So I thought that was very effective. But I honestly think for all of us, maybe it was just the subject matter just didn't hit us. There was a disconnect there. Maybe we weren't completely invested in what the story that was being told, the circumstances. Maybe
you mentioned earlier The Newsroom and West Wing as 2 shows which he has done very well with the script. And he's apparently doing A Few Good Men as a TV series as well. That's his next project for Aaron Sorkin. Or at least that's what it says on IMDb, that he's going to be doing a kind of TV movie of A Few Good Men. Do you think this would have been better as a series, especially with Netflix, kind of the people who are backing you, and have it as like kind of segmented parts? Because I could easily see that in a similar style to the American crime stories with the trial of OJ and the assassination of Versace. I feel like that would have fitted in better in that
I
sense.
don't know if there's enough stuff there to warrant a TV show, to be honest.
with
I
the
was even
different-
struggling with a 2-hour, 10-minute film, let
I was
alone
gonna say,
a TV series.
I'm sure there was loads missed out from the trial, but with the switching narratives, you could easily have one episode with the riots themselves. You could have an episode focusing on like the black man being persecuted. You could then go on to like more stuff on the riots, the Vietnam message. You could do a lot there with it.
I don't think I don't think this would work with Tally. I get the point of the trial and the subjects, but it's that sustaining. Like, could you sustain audience interest upon one episode to go to the next? And I don't think this has it. I think I've not seen Trial of OJ, but the big thing for that is it's the Trial of OJ Simpson. Everyone watched it because that name is.
I was going to say the trial of or the assassination of Versace. It does a very similar thing where it kind of stretches out that material, but both of them work really well. The Trial of OJ, there's an episode where basically they don't even go into the court. It's just focusing on the people, on their outside lives from the court, and focusing on like the lawyers and stuff like that, and what it's putting on them, the toll. So I feel like it could have worked as a TV series, especially with Netflix at the helm. With Netflix at the helm, I mean, they're kind of the kings of these online binge series. I feel like it could have worked.
It was Paramount though that sold it to them at the start of Corona, because that's the one studio that sold every single film, because money's on them getting bought out by Amazon and Netflix in the next 2 years. What they sold them, Irishman, and then they've sold them, Killers of the Flower Moon, the next one. So Paramount aren't here for much longer, I don't think. But it would have been interesting to see the original concepts. Like I said, it's been in the work for so long. TV, I mean, when this was written, TV wasn't the golden age, sort of 2007 time. Got to think then it sort of 09 of Breaking Bad onwards that TV sort of began to push where it is now. So it's a weird one. I don't know. I've kind of seen it, but I'm just again thinking of the Daniel Kaluuya film in January. I think that if you haven't seen that trailer, guys, go watch that trailer because that looks like it's going to be incredible, and it's a shame that we know the ending if you didn't already because of this film. But except for that, that's probably everything I can say on this. Seems like a bit of a downer. I don't know why, because I had a fine time watching it, but it was just fine. It was nothing more than that, and it's a shame because the reason.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason why we're having a downer with it is because Mangrove was so goddamn good.
Even taking Mangrove out of the equation and just looking at this film as it is, it was just, I think George said it earlier, it's just going to be one of those films that by tomorrow I'm going to have forgotten about. It's like another one ticked off the list. Okay, let's move on. And there's just no staying power with it. But that's my opinion anyway. But we want to hear your guys' opinions. So comment below, let us know your thoughts on the trial of the Chicago 7, as Carl already has done in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Maybe you think we're completely way off base and this is a tremendous masterpiece, a tour de force by Aaron Sorkin. So be sure to let us know down there. And follow us on social medias as well. Facebook, Cinema Savvy, and Twitter, Cinema_Savvy. And if you'd like to pick up any merch, we do have a couple of t-shirt designs. You can find those at TeePublic, link in the description. And yes, Advertising Saturday once again. Halloween, the finest day of the calendar year, is almost here. And we're going to be getting back into the drink-alongs. We haven't done one since Revenge of the Sith for very good reason. We didn't think we could top it, but we're going to have fun this Halloween. We didn't really know what to do, but I think a drink-alongs definitely going to do the day justice, and especially Scooby-Doo, a film that is very nostalgic to us. I haven't seen that film in about 10 years, so we'll see how that film holds up, if it does, especially with the amount of alcohol that I'm probably going to consume during the live stream. So that's going to be a really good one. It's going to be 8 p.m. UK time. And if you go onto the socials, all the different time conversions are there as well. And yeah, that'll do it for our review on Trial of the Chicago 7. We'll see you guys in the next review.